Very funny gentleman, headlines throughout the United States, coming to us from New York City. Folks, having a nice hand for Dan LaMorte.
Dan, welcome to the Beer Mile podcast. I think if our listeners haven't heard of you yet, I think it's probably a little bit difficult to describe exactly who you are. So if someone comes up to you and says, Dan, what do you do? Or who are you? How would you introduce yourself? What do you lead with?
Comedian first. I mean, I've been a stand-up comedian since I was 19 years old, and I'm 27 now. So 8 years of comedy and all in New York. I've only lived in New York for a month now, but I've came up in this scene. So that, to me, it's like that is my identity as a comedian, because that was like the life I chose right when my life before this was kind of thrown to shit. But now I honestly, as most ultra runners love to do, I will throw that in there too, because who doesn't love to talk about themselves and running far?
For sure. So what type of reaction do you get typically from the comedian crowd in terms of ultra running? And do they just look at you like you're crazy? Like, what the hell? Because I feel like that's completely different, communities, completely different groups of people entirely.
Yeah, I mean, you would think so, right? But comedy now has become like, it used to be so wild that so many comedians are sober and so many people in the ultra world are sober.
True.
It's just a different group of crazy for me. And I kind of love that, because as much as I love comics and those are my people, like I could talk to them like no one else. Runners are the only other group that I feel that bond with, where it's like this group of people that you're choosing to do something crazy and weird with. So you're the only ones who understand it. Some comedians, it's been really awesome. Like I have friends who are not runners, whether it be comedians or employees at comedy clubs that I work at, who have run marathons. There was this camera crew from California that's putting this documentary together about me. We could get into that later. I really don't care. It is what it is. But both the cameraman has run an ultra now, and his girlfriend just ran her first half marathon. I know a lot of comedians who have they're like, what shoes should I get? I want to take it up. So it's pretty cool when I see that. Some of them totally don't get it, because it is like, there are some comedians, the ones who are as heavy as I used to be feel betrayed. Like I used to be like 355 pounds. So like, I think that my fat friends feel a little betrayed by me. They don't want to hear about running.
So let's talk a little bit about that first. Maybe let's talk about the weight loss journey.
Oh, yeah.
So take us back to when you were over 350 pounds, and then what in your mind, like how did you get to running specifically? Like if you're that weight and you're trying to diet and lose weight, I don't know as though many people would pick running as the activity.
Most of the former baseball players I know aren't very fans.
That's exactly. Running is usually a punishment for most people, and so of all the different ways you could work out, like how did it specifically get into distance running?
But that was it. What he just said was baseball, because like I was a college athlete before stand-up comedy. I was a pretty good pitcher. And pitching and running went hand in hand. Pitchers had to run a lot. We were the people on the team who ran the most. And I never hated it. I even remember getting punished in college because we threw a massive party in the dorm rooms. And it got so big. Like I went to a small little D2 school. We had one dorm building. 40 people got written up just from our dorm room alone. It's like, it was a big deal. And the coach made us run hills for what I could only say, maybe an hour of hills. And I never run that long. And I wasn't the best in shape, but I was leading the way, whether it was because I was the one who threw the party or because I liked running. And that always stuck with me. And then when I got that heavy, like the weight gain was pretty quick. So I started stand up at 19. I blew out my arm. I got Tommy John surgery. So like my UCL on my elbow is kind of blown out. And I went from like 190 pounds what I played at, and then within 3 years I was 354 pounds, which is kind of crazy to even look at, because I lost it in the same amount of time. It was like a 3-year gain and a 3-year loss about.
Yeah.
So it's all very surreal to me, because to me it kind of 6 years is a short amount of time. So for me right now, it kind of just feels like a blip. It was like, wow, that was crazy.
Like you could have forgotten about it.
Exactly. That's what it is. Like people love to ask you, like, what made you lose the weight? And it's like, oh man, there's so many things along the way. I ate alone at a Golden Corral. That's sad. That's a rock bottom.
Eating alone can be fun sometimes, but especially if you're like you probably shouldn't drink more than 4 beers alone.
It's
drinking alone.
Similar vibe. Yeah.
Yeah, similar vibe. Drinking more than 4 beers alone and going to a Golden Corral buffet alone are the same. Because the Golden Corral is the type of place where the people who work there will pull you aside and be like, "You shouldn't eat the food here."
You're like, hey, are you okay?
Yeah. So like that was one. I mean, there were so many factors along the way, and then like I'd actually got to the point where I was starting to consider weight loss surgery. It was something called Obalon, where you swallow balloons, like, and they pump it up in your stomach. And like, I remember even having like a sense of humor about it then, like telling the doctor, like, am I going to cough up like a dog? Like, can I make shapes out of it? Like, I was always like, cause I was never that upset with my weight. I was always pretty happy and jovial. And then, cause a doctor told me I had fatty liver disease. And then that was kind of when it hit me. Cause like I was considering the weight loss surgery, that I get told that. And then it kind of clicked where I was like, dude, you were a college athlete 3 years ago. Just give this one last try and see what happens. So, long story short, I was in California. I was in Los Angeles for a month for work. And a buddy invited me hiking. And I did not want to go. I didn't think I would like it. So I went to a dispensary and got a pack of joints. And I got stoned before the hike and I loved it. I was like, wow, this is so much fun. So like the apartment I had subletted in LA, that it was in West Hollywood, it had this gym in the apartment. And I had never lived on my own before. I was young, 23. So this was my first time on my own. And I was like, oh, this is so cool. So I just started smoking joints and going to this gym. And that month in LA, I would do that. Then I'd go for a cool down walk, like walk a mile or two. And no one in LA walks. I don't know if it's like, I don't know what it is. The weather's beautiful.
It is a very like not pedestrian friendly
No one
place.
out there. So I was having the time of my life, putting in music, walking and getting stoned, and then going and working out. And that month in LA, I lost a good amount of weight. And I was on a diet as well because of the liver. I had given up gluten, which I hated. And that was that was probably harder than running. But that was kind of it. And then I got back from LA and I didn't want to go to a gym. So like I fell out of it because when you're that overweight, like you do get a little self-conscious, especially as someone who used to like working out. Mm-hmm. So I was like, what can you do alone? You could run. So I went for a run sober, forgetting about the weed thing. Cause I was like, you can't smoke weed and run.
Right.
I was like, that's not possible. So I go for a run and it sucked. Obviously I had lost about 50 to 75 pounds, I'd say at that point. So I was like high 200. So it was still hurt. And then the next week I smoked and went for a run and I loved it. And that was kind of the start of it. I mean, every run I do training wise, I would say 90% is stoned.
That's crazy because most people would typically say or associate, you smoke like, oh, that's just going to make you eat more. Typically you're going to get the munchies, you're going to eat more.
For me.
And also typically associated with like, oh, you're just going to go sit on the couch and be lazy as well after smoking. So it sounds like it had the complete opposite for you though. It's almost like a motivation or like a catalyst for saying like, I'm going to go do something now and enjoy it.
Yeah, because I learned how to do it the right way. Like I would smoke when I was already outside. Because if I smoked indoors or in a comfortable spot, I was going to stay there and not run. But if I was outside stretching where I was already going to run and smoked, then I was like, my body was already moving while smoking.
You're in autopilot.
Yeah, you're kind of tricking it a little bit. But also like, I felt like some people weed makes their anxiety worse. So this would not be for them. I'm a person who weed makes my anxiety a bit better. And I feel like a lot of pushing in those early runs, like you tell yourself you can only go so far. You're like, I can only do 3-4 miles. When in reality, that's anxiety because you're scared of what's past the unknown. So when I'm stoned, that anxiety's away. And next thing you know, I'm 5-6 miles into a run when I've never gone that far. And I'm like, holy crap. Once I'm not thinking about like the worry of it, I'm actually able to do it. So it was like this perfect way to numb my brain and probably for better or worse, numb my body because I'm not going to sit here and lie to you guys. I'm 27 now. 23 was when I started losing the weight. Going from 354 to this year, I mean, in the past year, I've competed in 4 ultras. This is my most competitive year right now. That's 4 years. I've been hurt so much. I have been injured.
Yeah.
Like I can't sit here and say what I've done is necessarily right because I'm currently dealing with an injury. Like I'm not a smart dude.
Running is such a high impact sport.
That was going to be my exact question. Was how do you not get hurt essentially when you have all that extra weight to carry around when you're getting getting into running? Like, how do you not get hurt and at least be super, super sore all the time?
There is something to be said about
the weed. I think it has to be the weed.
Like
and
weed
trails.
generally has like anti-inflammatory and some level of benefit.
Yeah.
And honestly, along with the weed, like stoned running isn't also like, it's not my only favorite activity. Like I love also getting stoned and getting on the ground and stretching. Like I'm very lucky with the life that I have as a comic. I have free time. So like I stretch like a madman when I'm stoned.
That's great.
Putting in like any of the non-fun stuff like is usually what like I'll get stoned before I go to lift, or if I'm like doing something that's not running that I'm trying to like contribute to running. Cause like nobody wants to do that shit.
No, I bought a wicked good slant board a few weeks ago, and slant boards hurt. And like I'll get stoned and put in like 20, 30 minutes on the slant board just because right now I'm dealing with one of those types of injuries where your body's like it's trying to tell you something's wrong. And you can't quite pinpoint what it is. It's like, well, the left knee hurts, the left hip hurts. I know I fell on a mountain this winter pretty bad, and that fall led to some things. So like, and that's also the thing. Like I went pretty quickly from being a guy, just pushing pavement miles to being like, let's see what mountain running is.
Yeah.
What was the first time that you made that transition?
So there's this mountain at the Delaware Water Gap in New Jersey called Mount Tammany. It's all kinds of wicked. I can't. It's all rocks, jagged rock. It's jagged rock, 1,300 feet.
So very technical.
Yeah, very technical. 1,300 feet straight up, 1,300 feet straight down. The down connects with the Appalachian Trail, so you get some AT miles in. Yep. They have a very low key ultra there, which was my first DNF a few months ago. I'm happy to get into later. It's called the Mount Tammany 10. You have to do 10 loops of the mountain in 10 hours. So 35 miles, 13,000 feet of climbing. My cousins tricked me when I was about 270 pounds to go for a hike, and it was to Mount Tammany. I don't think they even knew what it was, and it broke me. It broke my soul. And then I kind of just slowly, when I found the trails around me in New Jersey, and I was like, well, I wonder what happens if I went back to Tammany. Like, do people run that? And I started going there and putting in some miles there, and not enough because the race kicked the crap out of me. It was a real eye opener, and it's kind of lit a fire under my ass that I needed. But that was like the first time. And trail running was big. There's this trail in New Jersey called Clayton Park. That's 4 miles, 550 feet of elevation every 4 miles, rocks, roots. And that was kind of cool for me because like it trips your mind out in a different way because you have to be more present with the steps. You have to be looking at the ground. I've rolled my ankles so many times. I've gotten really good at taping my ankles now and rolling them and just going with the roll.
Nice. Yeah, I was going to say, once you, especially when you're tired on some of those technical trails, like it's inevitable that you're going to just fall on your ass at some point. Like
especially when you're
no matter
stoned.
What state of mind you're in, it's like nearly
especially
impossible.
If you're stoned.
When you're stoned, like sometimes I'll be feeling so good and like I'll be so stoned. Like I remember one time I took like a way too much of an edible and I was running on these trails and I was like, I feel so stoned that I think I'm going to fall. And then like running's that weird thing, right? Where when you have that thought, the next step I face planted.
Yeah. You almost like see your future 1 second at a time.
I'm confident I've Harry Pottered a snake into the path of trails quite a few times. I'm like, I don't want to see a snake, and then
like,
there's just
God,
one
I
there.
hope I don't see a fucking snake right now.
So I guess how did you even know that like trail running? It sounds like it was one thing at a time, but like to the general person who hasn't like been around the sport of running, like. Were there like specific people that you knew of or like inspirations or like how did you like know, trail running is a thing I should seek out trails and all of that? Like obviously you were athletic growing up, you knew you had some natural ability in running, but like, I don't know, that's kind of that's not a completely normal transition to go from like, I'm going to start running a little bit and then like, I'm going to go seek out trails.
Oh man, it's so perfectly niche, this sport. So I think like many people, my two big introductions were Goggins. And I avoided Goggins like the plague. I'm a very stubborn person. So when people tell me because I started running on my own, and like people are like, oh dude, this Goggins guy, you're gonna love his story. You gotta listen to him. I'm like, I don't give a shit. I'm not gonna listen. I'm doing my own thing.
Yeah, this is my story.
I feel that.
Exactly.
I feel that.
Yeah. And I was on the way to I never run more than probably 4 or 5 miles. And I used to run on the boardwalk down the shore in Jersey when I lived there. And I put on one of his things, and I was like, "Fuck it, I'll give it a try." And it was that 30 or 40% rule, to where when you feel like when you're at your wit's end, like you've only gone 40%, you got like 60% left, or whatever his thing is.
Yeah.
I'm probably misquoting, but I heard that and I was like, "Oh, that's interesting." So it was in the back of the head, and I start the run, and this boardwalk is right on the water. And my water bottle at that point, I didn't know handhelds existed. So I just had a water bottle in my hand, and I dropped it, and a tide came up and took it right into the water. Shit. So I was like, oh man. So I was planning to do, like I said, never more than 4 or 5 miles. I was like, I should just stop. Like I don't have my water like this. And I was like, well, let's see that 40% thing. So I took it pretty far, and then I kept pushing. And next thing you know, I'm 8 miles down the boardwalk, realizing I now have to make it another 8 back. I've never run more than 4 miles. It got so bad after the half marathon point that I begged a woman to drive me to the other end of the boardwalk. And she hopped in her car and drove away. Rightfully so. My nipples were like bleeding because I didn't know that stuff. So that's always the thing where it's like, I thought that was a cliche joke that nipples bleed, but then like you can't get someone to give you a ride when you're bleeding from that area.
You're like, what's wrong with you?
Do you find that in like part of running, you find material in for stand up?
Yeah. So like I'm getting to the point where I'm learning how to do it. Like I had a tweet. I wrote this joke the other day. So like, I'm not going to lie. I'm in this weird part of my career where like, if you get into the specifics of it, I had a very quick rise in New York City comedy. Like I was very lucky in that, but it was probably the work ethic of the college athlete. I knew how to like put my head down to work, and things happened pretty quickly, quicker than they should have, because when you're that young, you don't really, comedy is one of those things, you're only as good as the time you put in. So like, I was okay, I was funny, but I was getting opportunities that I shouldn't. So I got seen too quickly, and it led to this thing where like the career kind of stalemated. And now after the weight loss, it's kind of come back, and things are going well. But I'm also dealing with this thing where like, I love trail running, and it's like this other job, ultra running. So like balance is a very tough thing for me. So like, I'm just finding the balance again and putting in the writing time, because like some cool things in comedy are really starting to present themselves, and just like the schedules get more full and shit. But like yesterday I wrote a joke, or 2 days ago, I was like, my girlfriend doesn't like trail running. She's that I'm often on the mountain. She's scared that I'm going to encounter a bear. I know this because I saw her Google searches recently, which was, can a bear kill my boyfriend? Does a bear attack wipe away DNA? And where can I buy a bear? And like, it was this thing where like, it comes from a real place, because me and my girlfriend, like, running isn't her favorite thing. It is a point of conflict for us currently. So like, that's a funny joke that comes from a real place. And like, I did it on stage last night for the first time, and it did well. Like, it got a big pop, and like, that's like crossing the finish line of an ultra. Like, it's so hard to describe what it's like to write something that you're like, oh, I love this. And then you take it to the stage exactly how you wrote it, and it works. And like, I have 7 shows this weekend. So like, by the end of this weekend, that'll be a fully polished bit. That's the beautiful thing about New York, is you could do so many shows in a weekend when you work yourself to that point. Obviously, coming up, you don't have 7 shows in a weekend, but you get yourself there eventually.
Yeah. So I'm curious on the schedule of everything. The nightlife and just being up late in general, that's kind of typically the opposite of what a lot of, serious runners or ultra runners do. A lot of times people are like sunrise, getting out the door, doing their long runs, but you're definitely on a little bit different schedule. And then also with temptations, probably being in those clubs with like, there's booze and there's just easier to eat unhealthy and all that sort of stuff. So like, that balance there, like, how do you navigate that as you're performing seven days in a week? Sorry to interrupt this conversation, but we need to quickly tell you about a great opportunity. This is a business opportunity. It's not a Ponzi scheme, but it's a great opportunity. The Under Armour All Out Mile. Do you have what it takes to run a virtual mile and be on the best team, the biggest team, the fastest team?
Why would you sign up? First of all, why would you sign up for any other team than ours? That's a disgrace.
If you're lame, UAAllOutMile.com. Head over there now. Sign up. It's free. Takes 20 seconds. You go to the teams tab, search for Beer Mile Nation. You'll see our orange little guy. Click join, and you're in. And guess what? If you screenshot that and send it our way on Instagram, to Beer Mile Media on Instagram, you're going to be entered into a giveaway, giving away free shoes, Under Armour kits, all sorts of goodies. So I mean, it's a free way to get shoes in a giveaway.
Basically.
And also get to run a virtual mile and potentially win a lot of money as well.
Yeah.
So UAalloutmile.com. Make sure you head over there now. The mile itself is virtual between June 1st and 5th. All you got to do is hook up a GPS watch and run a mile sometime between there, and that's it.
Code it and load it, you know?
All right. Go over there, sign up now. Join our team, Beer Mile Nation. Back
Our regularly
scheduled programming.
It's kind of like running ultras where it's like every race you learn something new, and the only way to learn is to kind of to fuck up. I mean, the only way that you it's like the cliche motivational speaker thing, but you got to fail to know how to do it correctly. So the whole lead up to the Mount Tammany race, I was, they're one of the clubs that I had gotten into. Like they give comics pretty good discounted drinks where it's not rare if you spend do 4 shows during a night and you put down 8 or 9 whiskeys, they're going to give you a bill for 1 or 2 whiskeys, you know? And that's something that when you're a struggling, up and coming artist in New York, that's something you do take advantage of. And I drank too much in that lead up. So now the drinking's kind of off to the side for a little. So you learn that. The schedule is tough. I do a lot of my running in the afternoon. I'd say it's not rare for me to get out at 11. But I do still try to make myself uncomfortable. Before this knee started acting up. So I'm on a week and a half of rest right now, just trying to figure out what the hell's going on. I do force myself once a week to get up very early and drive an hour and a half out to Mount Tammany at the Delaware Water Gap and mountain run once a week. And it's not rare for me to go back to my parents' house in New Jersey and spend a couple of days trail running. There's a few trails out there you get a few thousand feet of gain in. So I do still try to if I could work, because there are some days I don't have shows. If I see the schedule, you get your schedule a month ahead of time, I could usually plan what days I could do an early run, which is pretty cool.
Yeah.
So I do, because you do want to make yourself uncomfortable, but being a comic, it's kind of cool because when this year's my first year, I'm going to try to run a 100-miler in November. In that lead up after shows, when I'm really tired, I think it might be good training to come home, toss on the water vest, and just head out for 20 or 30 miles at night. And just with that sleep deprivation, I think that's going to be the perfect training kind of.
That's true. I guess, a lot of ultra running, especially those longer races, 100 miles.
How well can you recover?
Yeah, and just being used to a weird schedule, having that obstacle thrown at you and getting through that. I mean, that's what you're going to have to do in an ultra, because you're going to have the most random shit pop up, how you're feeling, what's painful, all of that. So if your normal life is kind of variation all the time and you have to just deal with it, then that is training, I guess, in a way, for the mindset of what you're going to have to experience in the ultra itself.
Yeah. And I eat every day I'm at an ultra aid station: candy, cookies, quesadillas. So I train in that way as well.
I was actually wondering about that. So now that you've lost all that weight, is it something that you're always thinking about of, I need to, because a lot of people will gain weight back. And so is that something in your mind where you're worried about that? Or at this point, do you feel
I'm running so many miles?
You're running so many miles and you've now you're kind of at this new baseline. So it's kind of, like you said earlier, a blip on the map, and it's just kind of over and done with.
Yeah, since I run so much now, and since I'm 27, I feel like I get away with it right now. I think when maybe 30 or maybe 35 rolls around, it might be different. I'm maybe I shouldn't eat so much candy and ice cream.
Yeah.
But I'm somewhat I obviously I don't eat fast food the way I used to. That was my big thing. That definitely was how I skyrocketed in weight. So I'm more good with that stuff. I'm a vegetarian now. That wasn't really by athletic choice. That was from doing too many mushrooms.
Explain this.
I don't know, man. Some people do mushrooms and they just trip out, and then some people do mushrooms and they have that eye-opening we are one consciousness experience. And those were the mushrooms that I was given, and meat has never been appetizing since.
So I make a joke because you sympathize with the animals, basically?
I think so, yes. And I made a joke on stage that I saw a rat eating a chicken wing in Central Park when I was high on mushrooms, and I wasn't able to eat meat after that.
You're that's fucked up.
There was something about that moment where I don't know what I saw. We Freaky Friday, Lindsay Lohan. But yeah, mushroom. I loved meat. I really like tacos and stuff. But it was kind of probably a long time coming. My parents are both vegans, so
okay.
You're like the poster child for the war against the war on drugs.
Absolutely. That's so true. And also you're saying that then the way for us to solve, well, not solve, but for us to help people be healthier, better diet, help the climate is just, if everyone just takes mushrooms, then like we're going to be set. Everyone will learn and they'll see what they need to see.
That's what I like to tell myself, but then I meet some friends who I know that have taken mushrooms and I'm like, you're still a bad person. You defeat my idea. I have a few friends and I'm like, how are you still like this? I lost my ego in the backseat of an Uber. Neither of us have forgotten it.
On your creative process, like for me, I think most of my best ideas, creative ideas, whether it's work or whatever, just random thoughts, a lot of that comes like when I'm out running because you're just like in the zone.
Or on drugs.
Yeah. Or hey now. But so do you feel the same? I'm curious, like pre-running when you were doing comedy, like what was the right
like writing schedule,
the right environment that got you to getting those jokes? Like, morning, afternoon, certain substances, or in the shower, or like, what were you doing to get to those jokes? And then how has that changed with the running? Like, do you find that you're just out on a run, you're like, oh, that joke's gonna hit, I'm gonna throw that in?
Yeah, it's been like it evolves through the years, and then also I think you have to. What I'm learning now is go back to your roots. So like. It's funny. I always thought my come up in comedy was just I was like the young comic and it was easy to like push a young guy. But then I go back to my earliest jokes and I'm like, sure, the content wasn't there, but the writing, I was like, I was a really good writer in those early stages. So I used to type everything out when I was young. It was a laptop. Everything was typed out. I forced myself at least an hour a day in front of that laptop to write jokes. Just look out a window and think about things. That's what I'm an only child. Doctors like to tell me I'm on the spectrum as well. I agree with them. It's like my mind does work in a very interesting way. So like for instance, yesterday, so like to put it back and now it comes full circle. I've gone back to this. So like I'll talk about my other ways, but I'm now back to writing an hour every day on the laptop. And this exact bed, I'm sitting here yesterday on the laptop writing, and I see a food truck not being able to park. So that's most people just see a food truck not being able to park. What my brain saw was I had a friend whose food truck went out of business. The food wasn't the problem. He just couldn't parallel park. And like, that's what I saw. So then I write that down. I'm like, oh, that's why I have to get back to this laptop, because my brain is in that mode where I see things and I could turn it into a joke. And running is similar too, where like, but running is more of like, if I have a premise that I can't figure out, I'll put that in my head at the beginning of the run and that'll be the focus. But what I've learned is like, I'm at the hands of the run. The run goes where it wants to go. I ran a 55-mile race with Finding Nemo's Just Keep Swimming stuck in my goddamn head. I would have loved to think about anything else, but sometimes your mind just decides.
Yeah, it's funny when you're running. It can go either way. It's like you might just be fixated on the same thing the whole run, and you're just like, I don't know, stuck in this rut, so to speak. Or it could be the opposite, where your mind's just like all over the place, 100 miles an hour, and you have no idea how to predict that ahead of time. So yeah,
that's the beautiful thing. So like running, you could either focus on what you want to focus on, or you could zone out completely. That's kind of why I love it. And to go back to the writing, my other style is to just go right on stage if I have an idea, and to just be like, here's what I'm thinking might be funny. Let me go on stage and try to talk it into being funny. That's like a different style where it's like you might find a very more original laugh. So like some of my best things I've ever written have just because like I've done a joke and it got a good reaction and I'm feeling confident. So I said something in the moment and it works. And I was like, oh man, like I connected it in the moment. So like now I really do try to do a good job of doing both the physical writing and the on stage, because I mean, the brilliant thing of the most brilliant comics are the ones who can make it look like it's created in that moment, even though it's a joke that they wrote and have crafted time and time again.
Yeah. I feel like that would be nerve wracking though, to, I guess, put the pressure on yourself. Like I'm going to rely on, coming up with a few of these things live on set, and I don't know, maybe being nervous that you're going to be off that night and it's just not going to come to you or something. I feel like I would be more nervous going into a set like
get a little too confident and say the wrong thing and you lose the whole crowd, which is always fun. But like when you do stand up long enough, you learn to love those things, because like, the majority of times a good comic is hearing laughter. That is the noise you're used to. So when you're bombing, it's kind of this very unique thing where a room of people are coming together collectively to not like you.
Yeah.
And as much as it sucks for you, it is kind of beautiful. Like, you did unite them, not in the way you wanted, but you made them all agree that you're not funny. And that's kind of a beautiful moment. So I've kind of just learned to be like, oh, this is special.
So most it's like for the times when you are like on stage crafting material, like do you go into that night prepping for that, like with regards to like selecting the venue or like what's on your schedule, and you're like, oh, this is like a smaller place or this is a certain type of crowd that I want to experiment with? Or is it just completely like, it's a Thursday and I guess this is what I got to do today?
Yeah, so I guess like when you get to the bigger guys who like do theaters and stuff, like I see them, and like when they're on the road, they'll announce like new material shows where their fans will know that's what they're doing. For like a guy like me who's not necessarily at their level, like when I am on the road and doing a 45 to like 60-minute set, there will be new stuff worked in because that's my best time to like work on stuff because there's so much time to do with it. But like when you're in New York, like so on a weekend, I'm only going to do the new stuff that I think is going to work. Whereas like during the week on a bar show, there's a lot of shows that just happen in bars where it might be 8 people at a bar and you're performing for them and you're not getting paid. So like if I'm doing a show where I'm not getting paid, there's a really good chance that's where I'm going to work stuff out. Like there are open mics, but I am a little bit like, not that I'm past that level. My schedule does seem to be filled enough to where I could use these bar shows and smaller shows, which is beautiful because you get to work it with a real crowd and in a tougher environment where they might not necessarily be there to see comedy. Like a lot of times it's called ambush comedy, where like literally someone, like they won't tell you that this is the show, but they'll be like, hey, come do my show. And you'll be like, yeah, I have off Tuesday night. I'll come show up to your show. And then you show up and they just grab a microphone in the middle of a crowded bar and go, all right, we're doing a comedy show. And none of those people were thinking it. So you're competing against basketball and shit. So like that really, that's where you cut your teeth. You know, I've had some mortifying moments on stage that cut your ego like mushrooms do.
What? God, that was fucking hilarious. What are some of the biggest bombs? Like if you can remember the specific bit or setting. I have a family friend who, this is not the funny part. He's a young kid. He lost his leg to cancer, and we put on a benefit show to raise money for it. He's awesome. He had the type of cancer that my friend Jackie Hunt, I don't know if you know her, she just ran 102 marathons in 102 days. Yeah, it's just saw that on Twitter.
So they had the same type of cancer. So we put on this big show for him. They do it at their local synagogue. 500 people, maybe 450 people. He comes out and opens the show. So he goes out there and crushes. He's getting laughs and tears. And then they bring up a DJ. You can't make this up. The DJ goes, we're going to do a special dance. Jacob's best friend was passed away recently. His parents are here to dance to her favorite song. So we danced to the favorite song of a little girl who died. And then the DJ goes, all right, who's ready for comedy? And then I proceeded to just have the worst set of my entire life because no matter how funny you are, that's just the mood wasn't comedy.
Right. Right.
Someone literally came up to me after and he just put his hand on my shoulder and he said, I bet you wish you had the cancer tonight.
God.
See, but that works its way back into like
that works. That's like a funny thing.
Yeah.
So I could tell that story, but like that, I'll never forget it because like the whole time you're thinking like, this was my idea. I put the show on. Like we got this kid his leg and like I'm bombing. I'm like, it was bad. It was real. Like you leave immediately. That's not one where you stay for the buffet.
Stick around.
You know?
Yeah.
No, you sneak out the back door and you really think about life in the car ride home.
Jeez.
I assume it's like DNFing or something where you just have that. You have that period.
There's no post race. You're going straight home.
Damn.
That was probably one of the worst bombs. Like I've been attacked on stage before, but that is much worse than that.
God. So I was curious, somewhat recently there was all the controversy about Dave Chappelle's Netflix stand-up and whatnot. So how often does that happen in your sets where, I don't know, you just like offend people in the crowd or they want to cancel you or
offend the wrong people.
Yeah, exactly.
It depends, it's a certain type of audience who gets offended. I learn it's very young white women, and I don't want to stereotype, but that is who gets very angry at comedy clubs. Outside of that, no, I don't really think I have some jokes that people don't like, I think, but I try to preface it like that. There is one joke that I do that I find very funny. I won't do the joke on here. I don't want to upset no one. But the way I open the joke is I want you guys to know as an audience that as a comic, I know this is inherently offensive, but it's the funniest thing that's happened in my life. So for me to share it, I'm going to, but I'm letting you know that I reacted the same way you will hearing it. And I usually get them on it, but I know what it is, So my goal is never to upset anyone. I don't really want, I love silly jokes. That's really the core of it. I love silly humor. Like Mitch Hedberg was my favorite comedian ever. I loved that guy growing up. And it was just very silly one-liners that make people laugh. I don't do political humor really. I'll make fun of both sides equally. I'll do some political jokes if they're short one-liners that I could think of. But I just like being silly at the core of it.
Yeah. It seems like that would be a tough. I don't know. Does that go into your thought process a lot as you're
exploring? Yeah.
Jokes? How many bits do you have to say? No way, I'm never. It comes to your head. You're like, that would be freaking hilarious, but you're like, that this can never make it into a routine. Do you have that happen often?
Honestly, not that much anymore. I don't know if maybe my mind has just become more manicured to think in ways that I know will please an audience, or if it's just that maybe I don't really have that bone in me yet. I feel like the comics who really get into this stuff that push boundaries and even in a thought-provoking way, I feel like they hit that in the later stages of their career, when Carlin becomes a little more. But then, again, one of my favorite comics was Bill Hicks, and Hicks died at 32 years old. I just watched a clip of him last week at 26 years old doing some of the most prolific material I've ever seen, where he's already admitting to the crowd where he's like, I'm not a comedian anymore. I'm just a guy who speaks. And that's what he was. He was an Alan Watts type guy who just happened to be kind of funny. So it's weird because there is a part of me that coming up, I thought I was going to be a comic one day. Where I was like, maybe I'll do stuff that makes people think. But then I'm I love making people laugh. That's always what my life has been. It's just been silly stuff. And so I don't really, I have a joke about a little person. That's the joke that upsets people. It's that's the craziest I'll get. But that's I think the most boundary I push it.
Got it. Yeah.
You still kind of have a very observational type humor where it's just funny shit that you perceive in your own life. And I think that's kind of in the same vein, at least, of why I personally like the previous comedians that we mentioned, or at least that style.
Yeah. I love observational stuff where it's kind of because it's very interesting, right? Weight loss isn't funny, but I am able to talk about weight loss on stage in a way that's kind of more observations about how people have reacted towards me to it, things people have said to me. So it's not I'm standing up there, because no one wants to hear a comedian who's standing up there being I'm better than you. Because you want to sit in there and be oh man, this guy's losing it. My life is good. You kind of want to feel a little bit okay about yourself. So it's kind of very interesting to make things like that. So I'd rather talk about stuff that I've actually been through, because then I know people can't really get that upset. But one of the big late night TV shows, we were trying to work a late night set together, and I sent them the weight loss material, and they said I couldn't do it because I'm making fun of a fat person, even if that person was me. So that sensibility does exist. I've been told I'm fat shaming my former self.
That's kind of a bummer. Because it could be very inspirational. Inspirational comedy, like we kind of mentioned, is pretty awesome.
Yeah.
But for it to be just kind of shoehorned into the more negative connotations is
where it's because if people see my longer set on stage, I explained that I liked being fat.
You said you were jolly and
none of my friends ever asked me to help them move. That didn't that was, and now they always ask me. So I try to, and on stage I do things like that. I'm look, I was okay with it. It's this isn't a negative standpoint. Because I'm not up there trying to tell anyone to lose weight. I don't care. I don't care. Maybe run. I wouldn't hate it. People got so high and ran or moved their bodies more or walked on a trail. I think trails are underutilized. That's if I had one big thing, that would be it. I love trails.
Yeah. So I guess back to you getting high before you run, do you get high before every single run, or what's the what's your schedule or ratio look like?
Yeah, so it's been a mix. So like my first 3 races, I never incorporated weed in, whereas the last race I did a backyard ultra. I want to say maybe a month ago. It wasn't a last man standing one; it was a 10-hour one, so it was 41 miles. Okay. And the first 5 loops, I ate a 25 milligram edible every loop. And then I felt pretty good the whole race. So that was kind of nice. I like that a lot. I might work that in more. But most of my training runs, yes, would be stoned. And then, so June 4th is when I race next. I have the Cayuga 50 miler, which is a pretty competitive Northeast ultra up here. That's pretty tough, like 9 to 11,000 feet of gain. So like probably the weed that I have left right now, which isn't that much, will probably be the last of it. So like I definitely break from weed leading up to a race to give my lungs the best chance, because it kind of, I don't know, it like feels like, I have a buddy who's a professional runner, Michelino Sanseri, so I'll use his line, but it's like a PED for your lungs kind of, where it's like when you come off the weed, like your lungs kind of get stronger again, because smoking weed isn't great for the lungs. When I do take tolerance breaks, I run better. I run faster. I run smoother. My breathing is much better. My heart rate's more controlled.
I feel like when I big time on the heart rate. My heart rate is all over the place if I smoke before I run. But on my tea breaks, I don't think I necessarily, maybe I run a little bit faster, but I notice like the next time that I either take an edible or smoke before I run, that is going to guarantee the best run I have in like 2 months or like 3 months.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Like the first smoke back, that's how I knew. So like I did this race called the Batona 55 miler, which is, there's this 55-mile trail in New Jersey called the Batona Trail that connects a few towns, and they have just a straight point-to-point 55-mile race on it. They actually just got approval for 2020 to become New Jersey's first 100-miler, which is going to be pretty big. The New Jersey Devil 100. I probably will end up running that. But so like on that one, I T-braked going into it for a month and a half. I would say stress fractured both my feet at 30 miles in, finished the race just because like I should have brought shoes to change into. I kept the same shoes on, and just the tops of the feet kind of stress fractured around where the laces were put down. So it was not a bad injury to have. I recovered from relatively quickly. But I smoked that night thinking this is going to be the best high ever. And I was in so much pain from the race that it was like no weed went into my system, which is crazy after a tolerance break.
Nullified. Wow.
Fully nullified. That was the most like broken I ever felt after a race.
God. So yeah, how many milligrams of THC are we talking? Like when you're doing the one edible per loop, like how many milligrams are in those edibles? And like, do you even know how much yeah, go ahead.
That's the thing. Like you don't even know sometimes with these, but those I were told were 25 milligram gummies. So I would take a 25, and then I only did half the race. The second half of the race, I was fine.
Yeah.
That was a really good format to work edibles in with, because you don't need to run fast per se, because there is no winner of a backyard race if there's no last man standing and there's just all finishers. So like you come in with 44 minutes on the clock, so that means you got 16 minutes to rest, sit down, eat an edible, put the trigger gun on, massage a little bit. And that was the first time I tested it. So like Cayuga, I might put a few in my drop bags. I don't know. If any, maybe I'll even start stones, just because training leading up to Cayuga has not been what I've needed it to be for a race of this magnitude. I'd say it's a very competitive 55 miler and some pretty tough terrain. And this, if it wasn't for this knee injury that popped up after the backyard ultra, it would have been fine. Like training was really going well. Elevation was going well. So I'm hoping I could start running again next week. And then I think I will have to work edibles in to get to the finish line of that race.
That's the only scenario I'm going to do in ultra, and I would say is if I get edibles.
Yeah, but on a training run, it's 2 joints. That's like the smoke two joints like the song.
Before?
Right before, yeah. I smoke 2 joints before I go for a run. I won't legally say I smoke joints while I drive. That's illegal, but that is what I do. Just smoke a few joints, get to the trailhead, hop out of the car, and then just start to watch and run.
Damn, 2. That's pretty wild. Although I guess,
and if it's Mount Tammany, there will be 3 joints and maybe an edible, because you need to numb yourself up. That I can't explain to you how this mountain takes your soul.
The mixing, I think, is key. Like smoking before, and then like right when I start, I'll pop an edible. If it's going to be
CBD to take care of the body after. This is all takes care of it.
there needs to be like an instruction manual for people who are like, oh, I like weed and I would like to get into running, but I need to know how to combine the two.
Yeah, so like that is that is something I would love to do one day. Like I think when I get more grounded in, so like it's really weird being an ultra runner in New York City. Like I live in Astoria, Queens, so like the best I could do is I go to the bridge and do bridge repeats, and that like I miss trails pretty bad. But like I would love to start a stoned running club here, like because a lot of people do ask like, how do you do it? And I'm like, well, one, get a handheld bottle. That's always my number one key for stoned running. You need like the Nathan handheld bottle or whatever it is, strap it on. That's all really. And don't forget how to move your feet, or don't even think about it.
Yeah. I mean, it is interesting because running clubs and then like afterwards having like pint night or going to a brewery or whatever, like that's super common, like the combination of the two and that culture, that social aspect. So there's no reason that you couldn't similarly have, cannabis and running club, like it's the same exact thing. It's no different. And if anything, honestly, alcohol just makes you feel worse the next day too. So the hangover is pretty brutal.
Yeah. I've had some of my best runs hungover though, because I feel like I need to punish myself.
That's a good tactic.
Like, you bum, go do a half marathon now.
Have you heard of Chris Barnacle before? I'm curious.
No, I don't know who that is.
He's I don't
know who it is either.
He's like probably a decade removed in terms of like relevance, but back in the day he was he's like, I want to be the fastest stoner in the world, and he got into, I think, the 2016 U.S. Olympic trials for Rio for the marathon.
This does sound familiar now. I remember that. Okay.
He's I always want to know like what he's up to now.
It's a good stoner name too. Chris
Barnacle, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah, I want to know what that guy's up to, but he finished last in the Olympic trials.
He made it to the Olympic trials. That still means he's top 150 in the U.S. So that's a win.
I would say there's a good amount of ultra runners as well who partake, whether they're open or not about it. Yeah. And then there's also like, I don't know, do you guys know who Michael Versteeg is?
I don't think so.
I hope I said his last name right. He's my favorite runner. Like I'm at a point where I am fans of runners. So he won He won the Cocodona 250 last year, which was the inaugural 250-mile race through Arizona. He's the face of Satisfy Running, but he ran a lot of, I want to say the majority of Cocodona on mushrooms.
Holy moly!
Have you ever run on mushrooms?
No, is it similar to weed? That's why I'm now a fan of his. I want to try it because of him. But like, he's a beast, and I also think he has. I want to say I heard him on a podcast, maybe the fastest beer half marathon.
You know what? Now hold on. I think when we were talking to
yes. Okay, we talked to a couple guys from a podcast called the Beer on the Run podcast, and they're specifically focused on trail ultra, and they told us you need to talk to this guy because he does the beer half marathon. He's like an off the grid motherfucker. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so he's come up before. So yeah, there's something to him because multiple people now have recommended getting in touch with him.
250 milers too. Like in the documentary of the race, he's drinking whiskey at some of the aid stations.
Damn.
And a lot of those ultras will
That's
also
the crazy
have, like,
thing
beer
about
marathons
ultra running. It's like it's a party after.
Yes.
It's literally like, whoa, we just broke our bodies, and like everyone is now like raging around a fire.
You probably you can get pretty intoxicated easily after an effort like that. But also, I don't know.
Mixed with the effort, the endorphins of the effort.
Exactly. You got the adrenaline, you got everything going. But typically after the races, when you finished your ultras, like how spent are you? Do you feel like you do have enough energy to really celebrate it? You're riding the adrenaline still, or like, what's your recovery time been afterwards of just like, do you feel like shit for a few days and need to sleep a lot? How has it hit you?
It's been a mix. The first ultra I did, I was pretty trained up well, but bad race plan, like classic rookie mistake, went out too fast. So it was tough to finish. It was pretty slow at the end, but that one I went home pretty quickly, wasn't into the hung around for a little, kind of saw what it was about, like just sharing your stories with other people, like where it's like, I think Courtney DeWalter says the same thing, but it's true, where it's like no one cares about how if you finish first or last. Like they just care about what happened to you out there. It's like I got a taste of that. And then the next race I did, which was the Batona 55 miler, that was a lot of fun. Like I remember they had vegan chili, so like I had a bowl of chili after. The first race I ran 3 days after, felt pretty good. Recovery was okay. Ended up actually hurting my foot in that one, but then it wasn't bad the first one. The second one was when I stress fractured the feet. That took 4 weeks off. That was a month off completely.
Okay. Yep.
The Mount Tammany one was the third race I did where I DNF'd. That one I DNF'd at 15 miles in and like 6,000 feet a game because I tried to prevent taking a fall. I had pulled out my back in the winter on the mountain. I fell in the middle of a rock and it landed in my spine, and like it's led to quite some problems. But I ran on the race. I went to stop a fall and like slipped backwards and prevented the fall, but like tweaked my back a little. Mm-hmm. And I was already so deep into the pain cave in that race because it's just such a wicked mountain that I was looking for the excuse to quit. And the sad thing was like, it was the best I had ever run in ultra. So like not many people, it's about a 50% DNF rate. And even from that, only like 3-4 people finished within the 10 hours. Like they let you go to 12 hours. And when I got hurt, when I DNF'd, I had done 4 loops in like 3.5 hours. Like I wasn't the lead pack. My buddy Justin blew everyone out of the water. He ran it in like 7 hours and 20 minutes. It was crazy. But I was like in the top 20%. It was the best I'd ever run in ultra. And then that recovery was quick because it was like a real eye-opening moment because I go to the race director, I DNF. He goes, really? You're doing well. I'm like, the back, blah, blah, blah. So before I pack up the car and leave, I take some Advil. I put on warm clothes. I eat some potatoes. And then next thing you know, I feel like I could go out there and do more loops.
Oh, that's a bummer.
Was such a bummer because I was like, mentally I quit on myself longer than way before I needed to. So like that was that sucked. And but it was also one of those things, right? Where like you need to fail to learn. So I learned that if you just take 4 minutes and correct the things you can correct, it's like, this whole situation might suck, but here's 4 things that will suck a lot less if you change them right now. So it's like when you just realize you could flip the switch on the things you can, it sets the race back in the right direction. So I didn't learn that then. And in the car ride home from that race, my buddy told me he was running an ultra the following weekend. So I went to ultra sign up and signed up for a 41-mile race, that backyard ultra, which was a week later. And that was like 3 weeks ago where I ran that one after a week DNFing because I'm the type of person who I knew I quit on myself. I knew I didn't train the way I should have. I didn't get into mountain miles. I didn't have the vert needed, but I knew I could get through a 41-mile backyard. So the next week I went out and did that. And I was running 2 days after that and really well. I felt great. I was running the next day and feeling great.
Yeah.
And then that was around the time the Boston lead up started. And I'm not a fast runner, but when I see fast runners running, I get excited. So for some reason in the last 2 weeks since running a 41-mile ultra, I've gone out in not fast shoes, like trail shoes that are beat up on the streets, and just pumping out some like 715s and 740s, which is not my speed. And would you believe it that now my left leg is killing me?
Oh God, yeah.
Speed kills.
Yeah, damn. Well,
so that's like the whole run. That's like my whole running life right now is like that. That's where we're at, and it feels really good. Like I used to get really bummed when I couldn't run, and now it's just like I'm addicted to push-ups, so I'll go crazy with push-ups, and then wall sits like a madman.
Oh, there we go.
Because that strengthens the knees. So I'll sit against the wall for like 10, 15 minutes a day just to get those knees strong when I'm not running the trail. So then when I do start running next week, it's like, I missed a week and a half, 2 weeks of training for Cayuga, but I also strengthened the shit out of the quads and the knees and whatnot.
Yeah. How are you deciding what to do for training or structuring that? Or is it pretty go with the flow? I mean, I know you mentioned on the days that you don't have shows, like those are good days to get some more miles in. And you also mentioned, getting an vert in, but how planned do you have your training, or is it, I don't know, you kind of making it up as you go to some extent?
I would love to be very planned. Like I am a guy who loves schedules and I love having things mapped out, but what I'm learning with my body is it's very hard to do with ultra running. So it's like my base would be like, I used to love getting at least 50-mile weeks and work my way up to 70. When I run this 100-miler in November, I'll work my way up to 100-mile weeks if the body handles it. But like, it's just feeling what the body could handle. Like I love to get like at least 8 miles a run in, and I need to get better at going slow. Like it's all learning. Like it's so hard to convince yourself that going slower is training, but for ultra, that is the best training. And I ignore it, and because I see the runners in New York going fast, and then you get caught up in their thing as if it matters. It's like they don't know what you're doing. Yeah. Why do you care? It's so stupid. So like, I'm just learning those things. Like I don't have a coach, but the cool thing about being a comic,
most runners don't know that. I don't think. Like I feel like it's very hotly debated, or at least like people will let their egos get in the way of like purposefully running slow.
Yeah. Well, it's like the zone 2 stuff, right? It's like to build that great cardio level. And it's like, I avoid it so much just because I see somebody in alpha flies running faster than me. It's like, if I don't have those on, I'm fast too when I got those on, man. Those are steroids for the feet. I've run in them. I know what it's like.
I know what they do.
I remember the first time I put those on, I looked at my watch after a 5K and was like, there's no way that's a 6:15 pace right now. And that's what I was running. I was like, this isn't me. This is bullshit.
Hey, it feels good to go fast. So I mean,
it's
whatever.
Unreal.
It's fun.
It's my favorite thing in the world. I feel like I'm running in someone else's legs.
Yeah, it's wild. It's funny you mentioned we have the same issue being in Chicago because there's so many people out on that lakefront path, and it's the same thing where like if someone goes by me, even if I know it's an easy day for me, someone goes by me, it's just like something about ego. You're just like, oh, I should just like try to keep up with them or pass them back or whatever it is. It's like, no, you shouldn't do that. It's not
absolutely
not what you should be doing. It actually reminds me, there's a funny meme I saw that was like a guy running past a girl, and it said something like, picked it up from 7-minute pace to 6:30 pace because like she's impressed by how fast I am. Basically like the girl can't tell whether you're running 7-minute pace or 6:30 pace, but like in us, that's what we do though. We're like, oh, I'm gonna pick it up, and you like pick it up a little bit to look like sexy for someone or whatever, look like a boss, and it's like no one cares.
And then you blow up your training run 2 miles in, and you're like, what the hell?
Exactly. And then you're sore the next day, and then you can't do your next workout. Yeah,
all
absolutely.
it takes is me to be on one of the local New Jersey trails, and one of the high schools is out practicing, and one of the guys goes, keep it up. And I'm like, oh, you son of a bitch. And then I slam on. I'm like, keep it up.
Yeah.
And then, as if I could even come close to what they're running. And then I'm getting lapped by these people, and I'm sucking wind. So my training plan is very much just go with the flow. And it's like I said, I do try to I know elevation is key. So I do try to, I have a car, so I'm very lucky. I try to drive out to these trails when I can.
Yeah. So earlier you mentioned a documentary. Can you share any details on that?
Yeah, so it's kind of this cool project where this group out in California, I mean, I guess they have a few subsidiaries. The one they contacted me out was Cottonmouth Media. It's like they were a weed-based filmographer company, and they've actually picked up so many projects since in and outside of the weed landscape. But they liked the weight loss story that I used cannabis along the way, and they wanted to come out and film my first ultra. So one of their cameramen, the main guy, Matt, flew in from San Diego and stayed with me the entire week leading up to the ultra, which I didn't know how hard the Kardashians had it until then. It sucks having a camera on you 24/7. Like, it's very crazy. Like, it's weird, but that's what it was. It was a full documentary. He came to the chiropractor with me. He asked if he could sit in on Zoom therapy, and I was like, you can't do that. Me and my therapist don't like that.
There's a line we'll put in the sand.
But he literally did ask that. But like, he camera on me while I'm stretching, and it was cool. I mean, it sucked during the race, I won't lie, because like I said, I went out early and faster than I should have. For some reason, I didn't realize I was with the front pack. And when the gun went off, I got in my head, and I stayed with them till the first aid station. So I stayed with the front pack for 4 miles on a trail. So I was torched after that.
Yeah.
And I just remember the back end of the race, because there is a lot of walking in ultras. Mm-hmm. So like those last 10 miles, there was a ton of walking. And he just having there was 2 cameramen, and having the camera in your face when you're in the pain cave and walking. Yeah. It was crazy. But like looking back on it, to be able to have that, right? It's going to be so cool to see that. But like
That
the
footage
plan
is
was that was
amazing,
going to
I'm
be
sure.
the movie.
Yeah.
That was going to be it. And then I decided on New Year's Eve this year, I saw this documentary for a race called Rim to River. It was West Virginia's first 100 miler in a national park, New River Gorge. It's beautiful, tough trail, really cool 100 miler, Western States qualifier. And I love the documentary. So on January 1st, on New Year's Eve, when the ball dropped, I went outside and signed up for my first 100 miler. I may or may not have been under the influence of a lot of Molly. I was very happy, and I was like, "This is a great idea." So I signed up for Rim to River, and then it very quickly became like, I come from a very tight knit family, and it became this thing where like my mom and dad, you're allowed 4 pacers during the course of the race. My uncle used to run marathons. Yeah. He wants to train and run. My mom and dad want to see if they could train to become pacers. My aunt and cousins are flying out to West Virginia to crew. We already rented a 5-bedroom house. So I could turn into this big thing out of nowhere. And the documentary crew heard about it, and they were like, hey, what if we put the brakes on the first documentary and we make this larger feature-length film instead of a short one? Let's make a movie.
Yeah.
And let's do sweet. We got the 40-mile race, and then we'll work our way to the 100, and your family's involved. And that's kind of where we're at now, where it's turned into this bigger project.
I like it. I think that'll hit even better.
But the pressure to finish the 100 miler is going to be crazy now.
True.
Absolutely.
Do you think? Yeah. Do you think that's a net positive or net negative? Like, does that make it easier because now people will see it, and so you don't want to give up on it and all that, or does the pressure suck? Is it just like giving you anxiety and you're like, fuck, I don't want to deal with it?
It was a mix of both of that during the first race, where it was like, but now that I've run ultras before, with the one DNF, I know failure, I know not winning, but I know finishing. So like, I think I'll have a better idea of like, oh, this is a motivator. Like you don't, especially in a 100 miler, like who knows when they're going to actually have the cameras on me and shit. So it's like, it's such not a thought in my head for the 100 miler, because it's like there's so many other things that need to go right to finish that race. So it's like that's just an extra thing. It's like there's so many other worries for that race.
Yeah, very true.
And the schedule leading up, it's like trying to figure out even like, because ultra running is like, it's like you need these buildups, right? You need races before the big race. So it's like I got this Cayuga one. Then in September, I'm not signed up yet, but I'm running this 100K race out in PA that's like pretty rocky. So it's like you got to like plan the schedule, and it's like, well, you don't want to go too big and blow out your shit, but then you also need, the only way to get a training run in that long is to do another ultra. So it's like just learning that, where it's like planning all of this stuff around. But I honestly love it. It's brought such a cool new spin to my career. Like I have my diehard comedy fans, and now I have people coming into my life who are runners and stuff. Next year, I'm speaking at 3. There's this new event called Run Show USA.
Oh, yeah. Yep.
Next year, I'll be one of the speakers at all 3 of their events in 2023.
Hell yeah.
So it's like, it's so cool. Where like now I'm like I'm going on the road and runners are coming. Like I was in Long Island at Governor's Comedy Club last weekend, and 3 different audience members came up to me over the course of the weekend. Were like, hey, I used to be so-and-so weight. I used to be 380 pounds. I used to be 500 pounds. So it's like this cool thing where I'm like, oh, like these new people are finding me in the career that like comedy is what I love and running is what I love. And now people are finding me because of both. And like, it's so cool.
That's awesome. Yeah. Speaking of doing stuff in New York, what's your schedule? I guess, where can folks go to see your schedule for the next couple months?
Yeah. So my website is danlamorte.com. I don't put my local New York dates up there, but like, I usually post them on Instagram or Twitter, and people could just reach out. Or The Stand is my home club, The Stand, New York City, which is a great comedy club here. That's where I'm always at. So if you just Google my name and The Stand, it gives my schedule.
Perfect.
Well, don't be surprised if you see us in the audience in a few weeks.
We're
actually going to be in New York in a few weeks from now. So we're coming out for. There's a pro track meet at Icon Stadium, and so we're coming out for that, and then we'll be hanging out in the city. So
I'll probably be healed by then, so we could run too.
Absolutely, rock and roll. Hell yeah,
let's go. Maybe I'll even take you guys in the car up to Tammany one day. I'll take you to the mountain.
Oh damn!
I gotta prep for that.
Get ready for the pain train. I like it.
Yeah, you can see it for yourselves. That's cool.
Hell yeah. So one thing I wanted to go back to, not running related, was like giving the listeners a little bit of a sense of like what the grind is as you're trying to, make it in stand-up comedy in New York City. Cause I think the perception is that it is an absolute grind. You're like that whole starving artist, trying to fight to make it, stand out from the crowd. So what was that experience like for you?
Man, I wish I'd take the camera around the room. I have a bed. A lot of the leg stands on the bed do not match. One of them is a dresser. No, that is true. Yeah. So it's a lot of stuff like that. But it's like the early years, right? It's something called barking. So that's where you stand in front of, say, like those bar shows I'm talking about. They need audience in there. And how do they get that? They have young comics stand in front of the bar and say, hey, free comedy show. Do you guys like comedy? To everyone who walks by. And you got to get people in. And if you get 5 people in, then you get 5 minutes on the show. So like my early years in stand-up were like, I didn't like open mics. I felt like it was a very toxic environment. Some people love them. Some people don't. I didn't like that. So I went to like this guy at a mic saw me and really liked me. His buddy barked. So he set me up with his buddy. I started barking for his shows. That buddy knew a guy who just bought a comedy club. They needed a street team, like real ticket salesmen. So my day job then was I would be in Times Square all day long, usually 8 in the morning to 6 o'clock at night, selling comedy club tickets. I was not good at it. I got to keep a small percentage of the tickets, but I got a check spot from the comedy club every night for doing that. So a check spot is when a young comic goes on stage. For some reason, comedy clubs don't make the audience pay the check at the end of the show. They make them pay it usually with 2 comics left or 1 comic left, in the middle of the show. So to really make a young comic cut their teeth, they'll have the check spot where you were put on stage when all of the checks are dropped on everyone's table and no one's paying attention. So I'd go from all day selling tickets in Times Square and I'd be rewarded with that. And that makes you really good because you end up focusing. You're like, okay, where is there? One, it sounds like it is very sexist, but the old trick in comedy is focus on usually the women if it's a date, because the men will be paying, so the women will still be looking at you. So focus on people who are still looking at you in the crowd. Obviously, that's dated. So just look at whoever's looking at you and perform for them, even if it's one person, and make them laugh. And then it's contagious, so then it catches on. So like that's part of the grind. So then I would do that. And then from there, I'd run over to a bar called the Village Lantern, and I would bark there for 2 shows until about midnight, and then I'd get to leave at like 1 or 2 in the morning. I'd usually be like the last to go up. And then my dad owns a deli in the city, so I couldn't really have the time to drive all the way back to Manalapan, New Jersey, which was about an hour and a half away. So I would sleep in the storage room of his deli some nights, and then I'd wake up, go back to Times Square, and do it again.
Holy shit.
I slept on he had a washing and drying machine on the 8th floor of the building, and I'd put a blanket on the washing and drying machine. It sounds like a joke. I'd wake myself up in the middle of the night because I'd accidentally turn it on, and you'd just like, what the hell? And like the lights wouldn't turn off in the storage room, so like you had to just sleep with bright lights on. It's like it is kind of a lot of that, and it's a lot of like it's a lot of bombing on gigs that aren't fun, and it still is that. Like, there's still a lot of times in comedy where you're like, man, this sucks. Like, I probably tell my girlfriend I'm going to quit comedy 3 times a month.
Yeah. So this is exactly why you're good at ultra running then, because you're willing to commit and hustle and put your mind to something.
And what I tell everyone is why I love ultra running is like comedy, you could put in work and work and work, and it might not do anything. There is a finish line in a race.
That's a good point. That's a good point. So how much would you attribute your success in comedy thus far to like work ethic versus like luck, right place, right time, or meeting the right people?
I think I'm very lucky with the brain I have. I do think like I do have what would used to be called Asperger's, but it's autism spectrum disorder now. So it's like, it's a wide spectrum. So like, I don't seem it to a lot of people, but it's the way the brain works. Just like the way I just remember as a kid, like I said, how I described to you with the car parking, that's
Right.
kind of just how my mind does work. Like I see a joke play out in front of me. So I think I'm very lucky in that sense. So like, I don't know if it's luck career wise, because I really have had to work pretty hard. Like all of my success that has come at comedy has been through stand up. You know, I haven't really been on a big TV show. I haven't, you know, done a late night set. I don't have a Comedy Central special. Like it's all through jokes that I post online and through going on the road and stuff. And it's the writing. Like, that's why, it's genuinely, you're getting me at a time where like, I'm finally feeling great about writing again. And I'm committing to writing again, which is probably anytime I do a running podcast after I get hurt, I say the same thing. I'm like, I'm writing more. And it's like, oh yeah, because I'm not running 15 miles a day. But yeah, so it's like, it's just right now I feel like life is it's in a good spot, but I'm still working on the balance of it all. Because I'm 27. If I don't make things work in comedy in the next 3 years, they're not going to happen for another decade, probably. You got to make it by 30, unless you're not going to make it till 40, I'd guess.
Yeah, absolutely. So going forward on the ultra running, then you got the 100 miler obviously on the horizon. Do you see running for you just being this thing where you want to just go more and more? Like you want to get into the 200 plus mile races, or where does it stop for you? You know, do you have any like big long-term goals you've already been thinking about?
I do. I have an FKT I'm planning out.
Oh, damn. Okay.
I'm kind of scared to put it out there because it's an FKT that no one's done yet. So it's wide open.
Gotcha.
I will just say it involves the New Jersey Appalachian Trail.
Okay.
It'll come out to 140 miles and 22,000 feet of climbing.
Okay.
My plan is probably 2024 for that, or maybe if I'm crazy, 2023. Because realistically, I don't need to go for speed because no one's done it yet.
Got it. But
it's like people have done one of the Appalachian Trails, but they have not done this. I guess just put it, it's the out and back. People have done the 70 mile out.
Yep.
No one's done the out and back. Male, there's a female who did unsupported out and back in 3 days and 20 hours or about.
Damn, unsupported.
But yeah, man. So it's like I watched that documentary, like Cocodona 250, and I am someone who sits there and I see that and I'm like, fuck, this is awesome. Yeah. It's like I want to do all. It's like I'm the cliche ultra runner. I would love to do Western States. I'd love to do Leadville. I'd love to do Hard Rock. I'd love to do Badwater. I'd love to do I'd love to do it all, you know. Hurt 100 in Hawaii, the 200 shit. So it's like, I'll do it until I can. I now understand that I have the body that can do it. So I'll take it till the wheels come off. And I don't have health insurance, so it might be next week.
Hey, the good thing is you are so young. I mean, a lot of people get good at ultra running when they're like 40. So you got a lot of good years ahead of you.
It's like that's the college athlete in my brain, because
you're like, oh, I'm set up for this.
Yeah, and like when you like literally, it's not a joke. I blew out my arm opening day of my freshman college baseball season.
Jesus Christ.
So like I was a very competitive person. To have that taken away and to now have athletics back, there is that little voice in the back of my head that's like, I know ultra runners get good in their mid 30s. So it's like, obviously the elites, like they're good young, like, and it's happening more and more in the sport where Olympians are crossing over. You know, you got Des breaking the 50K record and stuff. Yeah. So it's like you got people coming in, but it's like I do realistically think I could be competitive in my 30s because in long distance, I'm not bad. I'm learning how to keep pace better. I think with the right training and better diet and less candy and shit, who knows what could happen. So it's like, and that 200 plus mile range is so new that if you slowly build your way up there, it's like, who knows what happens? And it's like, I know it's not going to be a career per se, but I might have a running podcast one day. It's something I'm trying to get started. I like that. I won't lie. There has been people who have come out to me with the idea of writing a book. That's not something I'm going to do anytime soon, but it's something I'd like to do. So it's like, there are all these cool plans. I don't see running leaving anytime soon, which some people close to me probably wouldn't like to hear.
Hey, you know,
if I had to say the big goal, I'm sorry, the big goal, I don't think any comedian's done a tour where they've run to every stop.
That would be awesome.
Okay. See that? All of these things that you're saying, like building up the mileage, the longer races, the FKT, doing something like that. then that's when you do have those big opportunities to write the book and
exactly.
tell that story afterwards.
That's what
so you just got to do all the
people.
crazy shit first, and then you have opportunities galore after that.
Exactly. I feel like there's a good chunk of the story written, but not the chapters that I really want. So like I want to get into, because it's cool to run ultras, but it's not even about being unique, because like I don't do this for how it looks. Because I mean, really, how you feel on the other end of an ultra is insane. It's like the way anxiety gets whittled down in your life, you just feel like you're able to handle things so much better. So like I really do it for that reason. I feel like life has become so much more manageable since ultra endurance. But it's like the FKT and stuff like that. That is stuff that entices me, because it's not a race. It's not about a medal. There's not going to be a medal at the end of that 140-mile FKT. But it is still like, why not do it? It's something for you. It's something for yourself. That's fully yourself. It's like those things. So it's like all those things entice me, because the races are cool, but it's like, where else can you take this?
Yep.
Yeah. You need a Netflix special where it's just like a one season of them following you running between your comedy spots.
That would be really cool. Like the
I'd
Running
fucking
Man
watch
special.
it. Yeah,
my buddy told me like there's a comedy special on Netflix called Comedy for Drummers. It's Fred Armisen, I think. He just does all jokes that drummers would find funny, and he's like, you gotta do a YouTube special of just comedy for runners, and it's just like all jokes for runners.
There's enough people that running is just growing as a sport across the board. The number of people that run now, so the audience potential is absolutely huge. I think audience potential for a running comedian is better than for a drumming comedian. I would say way bigger.
Probably accurate.
It's like running. I mean, running, even ultra running, so popular. They say it's harder to get into Western states now than it is to get into Harvard.
It's nuts.
Which that's bad news for a community college guy like myself. That's where I ended up after I blew out my arm. I went college athlete, then community college, and then comedy. The progression.
The natural progression.
The natural, that's how one becomes a comic.
Oh God, we have a funny listener question. We already answered a couple of the listener questions naturally, but there's a really funny listener question that came in. So, have you ever heard the saying that if you gain 50 pounds, you lose an inch off your dick length? Have you ever heard that as like an old wives' tale or whatever? Okay, so the listener wants to know: is there any truth to this old wives' tale, or is this simply that?
I have a whole bit about it on stage. Yes. I literally joke. I'm like, it's so true. I'm like, if Weight Watching companies if they just invoked that into their promotion, they would have Weight Watchers just like, fellas, your dicks get bigger. I would have signed up so much sooner. It's like, I have a whole thing. I talk about how weight loss is sexist, because when we lose weight, our dicks get bigger. When women lose weight, their tits get smaller. Like, I do a whole thing about this. It is true. Yeah. I talk about this on stage.
Now you really need to come into New York like as early as I am, so we can pick up a few shows.
We're going to a show.
Oh, I forgot. Sure, I just remember talking to you guys that like that's the cool thing about comedy is like when I do this joke, but I forgot one of the lines was I used this joke that I'm going to get fat again and skinny again, fat again and skinny again until I have a 30-inch penis.
Hacked the system.
Like can you bank inches if you get fat again, or is it just reverse? I just remember that. That's what I used to say. Like I stopped saying that part on stage.
That's fucking good.
I'm gonna say that tonight now that I remembered it.
Yes. That'll hit well. Was there any other good listener questions?
I think we answered the other ones. The only other one we had was, would you rather have nudes of yours leaked or your address leaked?
I mean, I'm a runner, so my address is leaked every day on Strava.
Facts.
Fair point.
Facts.
I guess I'd rather the address leak, since if a real killer wanted to find me. One, I don't care about my address. Comedians are the easiest people to kill. Every day we're like, you could find us here at 7, 9, and 11.
Yeah. Here's where I'm going to be.
Literally, I give them a blueprint of how to murder me and a spotlight of where to find me. If we learned anything from Chris Rock getting slapped, it's that we don't have good security.
Yeah, good point.
So, Although I was just thinking that, yes, my girlfriend has to get a new phone today, so she backed up all her stuff to the cloud. So I was like, oh, man, the cloud just got a lot of Dan LaMorte nudes. So I really hope you know where they are.
See, the nudes are already leaked, but just to Apple.
Just Apple.
Yeah.
Shit. So we've got your upcoming skits, your schedule. Anything else that you want to plug to the listeners?
That's honestly it. I don't have any podcasts yet. I used to have a pretty fun one that we're trying to make work again. It was called In the Aisle. We used to do a podcast in the middle of my dad's deli while it was open. We used to just sit down on milk crates. We'd bring in all time. We had Bobby Bacala from The Sopranos in there. We had UFC fighters, comedians. It was just the funniest shit. And the pandemic ruined it. So we're trying to bring it back. You know, my dad's the co-owner of the deli and the other co-owner might not want it. It's like we're trying to get him to get it back going. But no, that's it. Just see me at a race or see me at a show. I'd prefer a show because I make money on it. But if you want to see me at an aid station, that's fine. I'll tell a joke.
Well, if we see you at the aid station, we just got to give you that tip. So
yes, depending on the I've had runners find out I'm a comedian in like the late miles of an ultra runner, and they'll be like, "Tell us a joke," and I'm like, "I'm 40 miles in, dude. I'm not telling you shit.
Not on commands. Yeah,
no. I'm like, oh yeah.
Damn. All right. Well, thank you for coming on. We will be seeing you in a few weeks.
Absolutely.
I can't wait. That's so exciting.
Yeah. And
this was a great time.
We'll need to have you on again to check in at some point later this year to see how things are going in this lead up to the 100. I think it's going to be exciting to see.
Yeah, we could do an episode where we do like half before the 100 and then half after the 100.
I like that idea. The two-parter. Yeah. See where your mind's at. Okay.
Hopefully the second half doesn't start with me just in tears. Be like, I'm sorry, guys. I thought I was going to do it.
I failed everybody.
That's my biggest fear. Like you have your whole crew come out and you turn an ankle 5 miles in and you just have to limp out being like, well, guys, pack up your bags. They're driving back to New Jersey. But yeah, it'll be fun. I can't wait to see you guys. This was a great time. I loved it.
Awesome, man. Well, we really appreciate the time. Yeah, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.